Hello everybody. In this video I'll be presenting to you my Tediore Moze build. So I'll start out real quick with the gear. So I'm running 3 Tediore shotguns here. As you can see, I'm using 2 of them that do not have any anointed effect because anointments are not necessarily important for this build. I'd rather go with raw overall damage. So I haven't been lucky enough to find a corrosive nor a shock Tediore shotgun with a splash anointment, but that doesn't matter. These deal so much damage, and we're rarely using Iron Bear, so it's not a real issue. Next up here is the redundant face puncher. This is really useful because I pair this along with my Cutpurse Deathless. So for everybody who doesn't know, the face puncher deals melee damage. That's one of the special abilities that this legendary item does. So I went for a redundant version with 14 pellets because it gives me a higher chance to proc the Cutpurse, allowing me to refill my shotgun ammo whenever I chain my shots with an enemy. So I'm going to skip over these 2 Tediores here and go straight to the Transformer Shield. So the Transformer Shield is a necessary item for this build since it will be one of the vital parts to self-heal. And I also self-heal here with the Shock Tediore. The anointment here, the 75% increased shield, is just the icing on the cake whenever I need to use Iron Bear. So again, as I was saying, I don't often use Iron Bear. It's mainly a panic button, just in case I'm almost about to die. So for the grenade here, I'm using the Cloning Maddening Tracker. This grenade is completely insane and pairs really well with one of the skills that I'll be explaining shortly. This is the Cutpurse Deathless. This one here has 30% grenade damage, 40% magazine size, and 149 health per second. So the grenade damage is important since these Tediores, when you chuck them, the homing MIRVs actually count as grenade. So they'll be taking this 30% grenade damage and adding it onto the damage that they already deal. And for my class mod I use the Fortified Tenacious Bloodletter, and this here, as you can see with the abilities, so 28% splash damage, 29% splash damage radius, and 30% grenade damage. This is all based on splash damage and or radius, so this is also a very important class mod for this build. In addition, the perks that are receiving bonuses, I have 1 point in Thin Red Line, which is useful for this build. 1 point in Desperate Measures, also an excellent perk for this build, and 3 points in Phalanx Doctrine, which is one of the best perks for this build. Also, I forgot to mention that the Cloning Maddening Tracker is basically 18 grenades in one, so that's why it's extremely useful. So now if we're going into the skill tree, I'll start out with the blue skill tree here, the Demolition Woman. So the first 5 points I spec'd into are Grizzled, and this is only to go onto the next tier of skills. My other alternatives here are Fire in the Skag Den, which would be completely anti-synergy with this build, since whenever we're dealing splash damage, we'll be dealing bonus incendiary damage, which could be potentially awful with the healing, one of the main healing mechanisms of the build being the Shock, Everblast, and the Transformer. So if I spec into this, even 1 point, I'll be killing myself instead of healing myself. So this is just to jump down here. Using Torque Cross Promotion, 5 points in here. because splash damage radius is important for this build. The more targets you hit, first of all, the more damage you'll deal, and second of all, the more chances you have of proccing certain abilities. Like Vampire. I'll get back to Vampire in a few moments. The next perk here is Means of Destruction, which has 3 points in it. So whenever I deal splash damage, which is either, from Tediore chucks or grenade throws, there's a chance that I'll be regenerating ammo and grenades. So this is mostly used for the grenades, since my ammo is already getting refurbished with my face puncher and cutpurse deathless. So again, Vampire. More to follow on that perk. Pull the Holy Pin. 3 points on this one. My grenades have a chance of dealing critical damage. 30% chance. This goes with the Tediore Moze 2. Just a good perk here to potentially double a lot of my damage. I got Auto Bear here. I like to use Auto Bear as a certain decoy. So then we go into Vampire. So all my Merv grenades from my Tediores will proc Vampire. Same with my Cloning Maddening Tracker, so I'll be healing health really fast. This is a great perk to have, and in my opinion, for high level content like the M4 Maliwan Takedown, this is absolutely a must. It allows you to heal while you're using your corrosive Tediores and your incendiary Tediore too. So you're chucking your Tediore, you could throw a grenade, chuck, grenade, and you're still healing in the meantime. So you don't always have to chuck the shock Tediore at your feet. So it's really, really good. And the last perk I have spec'd in this tree is To the Last, which allows me to throw grenades while I'm in Fight for Your Life. This is just kind of a luxury item to have, a luxury perk. I think it's pretty useful. However, the main reason I'm using it is because I had one last point to spec into an ability, and I figured that this would be a good place to spec into. And also while I'm in Fight for Your Life, if I'm chucking grenades, well, as you can see on the anointment of my Cloning Maddening Tracker, I'm getting a 25% weapon, grenade, and action skill damage buff. So again, Fight for Your Life, I'm down, chuck a grenade, Tediore, rinse, repeat, so each one of those Tediores is going to deal bonus damage. Alright, so now on to the next tree. We are in the Shield of Retribution tree. So I'm using Security Bearer here, which pairs well with Auto Bear. This will allow my Auto Bear, which acts mostly as a decoy, to have an extra bubble shield, so he could actually survive longer. Armored Infantry is pretty easy to explain. This is just 15% gun damage and 13% damage reduction whenever my shields are active. So my shields are always active. Again, I'm running a Cutpurse Deathless. So, as you can see, I have 38,000 shield. I have 1 life. So this is just basically active all the time. And again, Selfless Vengeance, pretty much like Fire in the Skag Den. So this one would be a suicidal perk to use. So whenever I'm reloading, I'm dealing bonus incendiary damage. Again, if ever I'm chucking one of these Tediores at my feet, automatically I'm going to kill myself. So obviously we skip this one. Well, we got 5 points in Drowning in Brass. This is a really good perk. So you could easily get that 60% gun damage bonus. And the negative fire rate that you get from this is completely irrelevant, since we're throwing Tediore shotguns. Even if it was relevant, I mean, 60% potential gun damage is well worth the negative fire rate. So this is, on any build, I would spec 5 in Drowning in Brass. I got 3 points here into the red line, so This is basically just to keep on going down the skill tree, but this is a useful perk. I mean, each point I'm speccing in here gives me 3000 shield with the amount of shield capacity that I have. So it's a pretty good perk and makes my shields bigger. Flat off Ingenuity, I only have 2 points in here because this is honestly only used to go down the skill tree. These points, each one adds about 1000 shield capacity to my build, and the shock resistance is completely irrelevant since we absorb shock damage. And going down here, we got full counter whoop-ass. So whenever you enter Iron Bear, your shields start recharging instantly. So again, just another perk to spec here to go down the tree, and also because this is just all around a good ability to activate when you have to activate Iron Bear as a panic button, since your shields are going to recharge, which is something you want to activate whenever your shields are getting low and you're running out of options. So at least when I'm activating Iron Bear, my shields are going to start charging up. I did not put any points in experimental munitions because there seems to be some kind of glitch with this. So even though at the base I'm not dealing any incendiary damage, for some reason whenever I spec into this ability I seem to have some kind of innate incendiary damage. So this is a no-go with a Tediore build. It just ends up killing you like Selfless Vengeance and Fire in the Skag Den. Then speccing in these points allows us to go down here to Phalanx Doctrine, but right before we go to this fantastic part, I'm going to talk about Desperate Measures. So Desperate Measures allows us to have a constant buff of 67% extra gun damage. Since the lower our health is, the greater the increase of damage. As you can see, my health is up 1. So I'm always having a 67% gun damage bonus, and it went up to 67% because I have 1 point from my class mod. And this is by far the best perk for this build. Since this build is all about killing stuff fast, we're going to be stacking up a lot of stacks of Phalanx Doctrine. So this perk is really good. 16% gun damage per stack, 24% max shields per stack. And honestly, during areas where there's crowd control needed, or basically anywhere where there's enemies, I'm able to rack up 5 to 10 stacks pretty easily. So if you do the math real quick, 5 stacks, 16%, that's 80% extra gun damage. And something ridiculous like almost, 150 to 200% extra max shields. It's pretty crazy. So this is definitely, I'd say, the star of the show. Again here, this perk's useless. This perk is completely unnecessary. You don't need shield recharge rate, don't need shield recharge delay. This perk is completely broken, it doesn't work, not even worth speccing into. And I didn't mention here, but any of these Iron Bear perks that I haven't specced into are just completely irrelevant to the build. Do not need extra grenades, would rather spec points elsewhere, since I always regen my grenades on a pretty regular basis, so this is kind of a waste. Another Iron Bear perk is a waste, and if I use this perk, I will end up also killing myself on a constant basis, so avoid this at all costs with the Tediore build. Again here, for the Iron Bears, perks, this is pretty obvious. I'm using the Vanquisher Rocket Pod along with Target Softening, so this allows me to debuff enemies. And also when I'm using Iron Bear as a decoy, well, when he's shooting enemies, he'll be debuffing them for me while being a decoy. So this is, pretty much the only ability from Iron Bear that'll be worth using, because Iron Bear sucks, and none of these perks here for Iron Bear are worth anything in Mayhem 4. Absolutely nothing is good for Iron Bear, except for target softening, which again makes that enemies you hit with this take an extra 15% damage. And as you've already probably seen, there's no points in the green skill tree. There is just no reason to spec into this tree at all. All this tree could do to benefit this build is perks like Match Set, Scrappy, Scorching RPMs, Russian Offensive, Iron Bank, basically stuff that makes the magazine bigger, which translates to more damage from your Tediores. Switching to your guns faster, running while shooting and reloading, and again, more magazine. So this is kind of redundant, and there's way better perks in the other two skill trees to invest points in, rather than investing any points in the Bottomless Mags skill tree. So, basically that's it. I hope you've enjoyed my brief explanation of how my build works. And I know a lot of people don't like Tediore builds. I myself am not a huge fan of this build. But, when you gotta solo the M4 Maliwan Takedown on Mayhem 4 with Moze, sometimes you have no choice but to use something that deals extreme amounts of damage and that at the same time heals you. She's behind the other Vault Hunters as far as raw damage and raw healing, so figured that this was the best build for me to do a speed run. So with this said, hope you have a great day.